Dune 2 is going to make sound waves across the sci-fi film industry, and I'm gonna tell you why. Throughout the film's franchise, we undergo a journey that takes Paul through an identity crisis. Now, give me a moment now, this will make sense when I talk more about it. With the extermination of House Atreides, Paul was forced to survive by finding and assimilating into the traditions of the native Fremen people. Throughout the movie, there are very clever time jumps to indicate that Paul is getting closer and closer to the Fremen people. They show him going on missions to interrupt spice harvesting operations. They learn that his new nickname is Muad'Dib, and he even learns to ride the sandworm, the Shai Hulud. And it was all sweet until Gurney had to show up and remind him of his expectations, his ultimate purpose. And now he's in conflict with juggling between the prophetic expectations of the Fremen as well as the goals of the House Atreides. Eventually he feels compelled to take the water of life, thus spawning the Kwisatz Haderach. I don't know how to say that properly. And what this does is it further complicates his identity as he becomes closer to the Bene Gesserit, whilst also conflicting with the nature of the Harkonnen background. And as he uncovers this profound discovery, we also see a transition and shift in Paul's demeanor, ambition, and goals. He moves south despite all of his visions of war, famine, and death, and adopts a godlike persona, going as far as to challenge anybody in the siege. A confidence and persona that only happened once he made that discovery. The irony in this is that despite Paul being able to see so much, it has tunneled his vision towards a path of ambition, revenge, and power. And upon this identity crisis, he is torn between the truth of his bloodline, the responsibilities of the thingy, and the promise he made to avenge his father. And despite such conflict, he still denies his Harkonnen half. And to reinforce this idea, he finally reveals to the entire siege that he is Paul Muad'Dib Atreides, hence combining his false and newly chosen identities. This constant entanglement can link back to Chani saying that you are no Fremen, you are a foreigner, not to me but to the sands, which is a metaphor that Paul's identity is constantly ever changing, similar to the sand dunes of Arrakis. But it does not end here. He continues to enforce power, prophecy, and purpose by taking the daughter's hand of the Emperor, House Corino. So not only does he become Fremen, not only does he learn his part Harkonnen, but he also acknowledges the legitimacy of becoming part of House Corino. All in all, Paul Atreides, the man that sees all, past, present, and future, is now able to view a life from all the great houses. He has lived through the honor of House Atreides, he has learnt the ways of the sand through the Fremen, and he has showcased his brutality with House Harkonnen. And finally, now he will lead through the vision of House Corino. Every vision, prophecy, flash forward was masterfully placed. It seems as if every scene had a purpose, every moment was significant, there was no moment lost. And this was no accident, this wasn't just a motif that Denis Villeneuve implemented. No, the significance of such foreshadowing is because as a viewer, we get a glimpse into Paul's visions and dreams. It keeps us intrigued. Will this happen? Can this happen? Oh, it happened. You know, but it was so effortlessly implemented that it did not act as a mid-film spoiler. It acted as a way to throw the viewers off, to keep us interested and fascinated. We see this in the first film when Paul was given an image of the Chosen One, or the Lisan al-Gaib, which in Arabic translate to the hidden or the unseen. And you know, that's ironic because this whole movie he was hidden. He was unknown to House Harkonnen, to House Corino, that he was still alive. The Fremen used this term to represent Paul as the Messiah, or a prophet chosen from foreign lands to bring them to paradise. In Dune 2, Paul delivers on this prophecy, but it isn't more so about the destination rather than the journey we were placed on. Another instance was that in the first movie, we were given many visions of Chani, not knowing the true significance behind it, but in the second movie it delivers an incredible purpose that has evolved far greater than a simple love story. And the fight scene between Paul and Faye Rotha was also foreshadowed as the only way, meaning that the knife had significance at the time of the flash forward, but what significance did that hold? Later we learned that this sword, borrowed by House Harkonnen, later wielded by House Atreides, was the cause for the end of House Corino's reign. Very poetic. Very cool. All in all, I must say Dune 2 perfectly implemented and executed the use of foreshadowing. Giedi Prime, my favorite heart of the entire movie was on this planet because it gave us an in-depth look into the madness of House Harkonnen. The image of House Harkonnen is supposedly brutal, powerful, incredibly cruel, and we finally got to witness that in this movie. In the first movie, we were given a glimpse of their terror, represented through the harsh methods of war and even the intimidating look of the Baron himself. But finally, we were able to witness how brutal they should be, how brutal they can be. Moreover, the traditions for his coming of age celebration was a Colosseum fight, filled with a large audience that all appreciate the violence of executing the last remaining captives of the House Atreides. Such traditions today is so primitive, so cruel, and despite all their technological advancements, space travel, spice harvesting, and even force fields, they still retain such primitive methods of celebration. This is further supported through the use of black and white. This shows that they are still living in the past, that they have failed to progress into a more civilized nation, and just overall indicating that they are still within primitive traditions. And to put a nail in the coffin, the robotic movements of the army, the crowd cheering, and even the security watching were symbolic of a dystopian and dark society. And this showcases that the inhabitants of Giedi Prime is the symbolic manifestation of what could happen if individuality and self-expression were stripped from society, and this further gives purpose to their physical appearance. It's the showcase that they have strayed so far away from the conventional look of humans that they have become hardened and pale, similar to death itself. And this further supports the notion that they are cold-hearted, that they lack empathy, and this is the reason why they find killing so easily. Overall, Giedi Prime offers a unique overview into science fiction by showing us a new way to represent planets, identity, and culture. This movie was able to successfully incorporate a holistic approach when it came to politics, resource allocation, war, religion, economics, and family regimes. Now that's hard to do, but to make this masterfully all work out together is very, very impressive. For instance, the Bene Gesserit were advisors for most of the family regimes, due to the nature of ability to detect lies. And because of this, they were unchecked. There's no one to check if they're lying, so they had a lot of influence and control over the political landscape, advising and controlling most leaders in a sense that ultimately only benefits the Bene Gesserit. I also do believe this is an allusion to Christianity and the power and influence they still hold till this day in modern politics. Behind the root of it all, however, is the ambition to control spice. Otherwise, resource control and market manipulation, which was another relevant aspect of the Dune series that is incredibly relevant in today's context, now more than ever. It emphasized that controlling spice is representative of controlling the market, and one who controls the market controls the world. Overall, Frank Herbert had created a world so far from ours yet also so close, and I believe that Denis Villeneuve had perfectly adapted Frank's vision of his world into the film we see today. Now this is what separates Dune 2 from any other sci-fi film. Unlike the first movie, we are quickly reintroduced into the world of Arrakis, which I believe was done intentionally to represent the urgency, the swiftness, and the danger that the planet holds. There were no dull moments, no nonsensical and unwarranted scenes. Everything, in my opinion, transitioned smoothly from start to finish. Again, I've only watched this film once, so this is my initial take on the first viewing, but I'd have to give it a 10 out of 10 for pacing. Intrigue! Otherwise known as world building. They were much quicker, much smoother in generating interest, keeping the viewers hooked and providing significant scenes all throughout the movie. They illustrated a whole new world of interest. It wasn't just a bland, insignificant detail in the background, no, it was a narrative that implemented every detail into its story. Some notable scenes that I considered significant was the entirety of Giedi Prime. Of course, I'm biased, that's my favorite part of the movie. The interruptions of spice harvesting, the introduction of House Coronel, the people who pretty much run the world, Paul learning to ride the sandworm, the methods used to extract the water of life, the demolition of the Fremen siege, obviously the scenes of the final battle, and the arrival of the noble houses and their departure from Arrakis. The list goes on, and I think you get my point. What my point is that when I mentioned those scenes, an image of it popped up in your head, some way, in one way or another. For this aspect, a unique and original experience in film is so hard and difficult to produce. It has become so rare to experience a world that is completely different from our own, or from one that we are already familiar with. So for this aspect, I give it a 10 out of 10. Although they kept many of the original soundtracks and compositions from the first movie, the implementation of such music was a lot more cleaner than the first movie itself. I felt in the first movie it interrupted certain scenes and prevented us from even hearing some parts of dialogue. I feel they have taken the criticism and have really improved on the placement and timing of their soundtrack. All in all, it was a significant improvement, and I am a bit biased here because I listen to their soundtrack very often, and even though the sound and music itself is not anything really new, it is the correct music for this film, and I give it a 9 out of 10. Character development. Now this is the bread and butter of all films. Dune 2's character development was extensive, logical, and beautiful. It successfully encapsulates the burden one must carry throughout their journey, and how this weight can become so heavy it crushes you amongst the many others around you. And we saw this with Paul Atreides. We saw this with how he handled the war, not as a man fighting for survival, but as a man avenging his house and conquering Arrakis to become the true Duke. We noticed the spiral into power with Lady Jessica and her obsession with making Paul the next Messiah. She went from becoming Paul's teacher to becoming his biggest advocate, which is completely different from each other. We were also shown the slow demise and downfall of House Harkonnen, how the inner roots of the family eventually branched out so far that they had fallen from the tree. We saw this with Glasul Raban and his eventual down spiral from his position of power. They had even shown us the development of the Fremen and how they went from not trusting Paul to laying down their life for him. Whilst handling already so many aspects of the film, they were able to wonderfully portray the character development of the people, houses, and even the nature of Arrakis itself. For this degree of difficulty, but also keeping it relatively easy to follow along with, I give it an 11 out of 10. Yeah, an 11 out of 10. Yeah. Overall rating, I really am no better than the IMDb people, because I'm giving this pretty much 100 out of 100. Yeah, I don't know what else to rate it. I don't know what else to rate it. And I don't care. I've been a fan of this franchise even before the second movie came out. The first one had a big impact on me, and the fact that it superseded my expectations says a lot. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I hope you guys did enjoy that. Please let me know your thoughts about the film as well. I'm happy to argue with anyone. Absolutely anyone. See you guys later. Have a good night. Or day. I don't know. Wherever y'all are. See you later. Bye-bye.